Meanwhile, the Trump administration has received a huge shot in the arm courtesy of the United States Supreme Court. Now, the court has decided to allow the nationwide enforcement of the president's controversial restrictions on asylum seekers. The rule was introduced in July and was subject to a lot of controversies even then. It requires migrants to seek asylum in a country other than the United States before they become eligible to seek asylum in the United States. This means that a migrant coming from Central American nation, let's say such as from Guatemala or Honduras, after having survived these difficult ordeals of crossing over into the United States, will first have to seek asylum from a country like Mexico, which would be the natural choice before he or she would be granted the permission to seek an asylum in the United States. Now, only after seeking protection in Mexico can they then seek asylum in the United States. And this screening process makes most of the migrants at the U.S. Mexico border ineligible for asylum. Now, for most Central American migrants, their destination is actually the United States, so they seldom apply for protection during their journey through Mexico. Now, this ruling has brought to an end decades of U.S. asylum policy, and many human rights groups are up in arms. They are arguing that this is a violation of the U.S. Refugees Act and also the United Nations guidelines on asylum seekers. Now, the Supreme Court order for the time being has reversed a lower court order which had put a hold on the controversial law. Now, two justices of the Supreme Court had dissented with the judgment and had termed it as a sidestepping of the normal judicial process. Now, Donald Trump, meanwhile, has hailed the Supreme Court's ruling and has termed it as a big win for his administration's immigration policies. Now, Trump has also reiterated his stance where he's equated open borders with increased crime.
They want to have open borders, and open borders mean crime, and open borders mean people drowning in the rivers, and it's a very dangerous thing.
All right, now what happens if Britain were to leave the European Union without a deal? This is something that is in fact being speculated upon within Britain. Now, a new report published by the British government highlights that in the worst case scenario, how bad things could actually become if a no-deal Brexit indeed becomes a reality. Now, the report called Operation Yellow Hammer lays out the worst case scenario. In the event that Britain decides, as Boris Johnson would love to do it, to leave the European Union without a deal, and the outcomes are, of course, not a favourable one. Now, there could be waiting periods of almost up to 2.5 days at border crossings for trucks which would bring in supplies. What this would mean is that essential medicines will become scarce. Fresh food supplies that people could just walk in the supermarkets and purchase may not essentially remain available. Now, the report basically paints an extremely adult picture for cross-border transport and trade. As predicted by many experts, the financial system of Britain could take a hit and fuel shortages could become a real possibility. The report also states that the people of Britain are simply not ready for the shock of a no-deal Brexit, and that the negative impact of an abrupt Brexit could in fact linger on for several months to come. Now, opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn has squarely blamed Boris Johnson for the damning report and has said that the Prime Minister was prepared to punish the common people who could not afford a no-deal Brexit. Now, the report was published after the British Parliament voted to force the government into releasing it. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been adamant on leaving the European Union with or without a deal on the 31st of October. It even asked the country to brace itself for a no-deal Brexit scenario. One of the sticking points in the deal has been the clause of the backstop of Northern Ireland. Johnson has reiterated that he would like to see the clause removed since the Parliament is in favour of the move.
Well, Lavi, the backstop is going to be removed, I very much hope. And that is, I insist, because that's the only way to get a deal. The UK Parliament will not accept the current withdrawal agreement. There's no way that is going through. But the crucial thing to understand is that we will not accept, and I've seen a bit of chatter about this, a bit of stuff in the media about this, we will not accept either a Northern Ireland only backstop. That simply doesn't work for the UK.